Hey folks, welcome back to the show. I'm not too sure what this is going to be yet because I don't do these commentary videos very often, but they're kind of fun and there's a bit I want to talk about this month. So let's just jump into it and look at some things and say some things about some things. Let's start off with the most fun one, the Xbox One S All Digital Edition. Yes, exactly what Xbox needed, another console with a terrible acronym, the Xbox One SAD. I have two minds on this one. If you aren't familiar, the Xbox One S All Digital Edition is a digital discless version of the Xbox One S, sold at a slight discount to the original S model. The Xbox SAD doesn't have any added power or storage space or anything really. In fact, it only takes things away, namely the disk drive. That said, to say that removing the disk drive is all they done kind of glances over some more farther-reaching changes with the system. Yes, it's sold at a discount, but funny enough, Xbox's website currently prices the disc-based version of the Xbox One S at the same price as the more limited discless version. What does removing the disk drive mean for gamers? Well, for gamers, there's no reason to get this over the original at all, especially not while the prices are the same as each other. Now you may say to yourself, but I only play games digitally, but who cares? You can buy the disc version of the console and still play digitally. And if you have a friend who wants to lend you a game, or if you come across a game you like enough that you need to own it, or you need to put it on a shelf, or you need to make sure that you can still play it long after download servers for games on the Xbox One are shut down, you'll still be able to revisit it. Having that physical media drive ensures a console can still have a life long after digital download services have ended. And make no mistake, much like they did with the Wii, every other console's online store will eventually shut down or stop being supported on outdated hardware. And it's not just online stores shutting down that can cause you to no longer be able to play older games. Just look at things like the earlier Forza games, which have already been pulled from Microsoft's online stores. The second licensed music expires in a game, that game can no longer be distributed. This is an issue entirely unique to digital games and online stores. Until digital games have a real aftermarket where recycled games can be easily sold long after non-private sales are no longer legal, this will remain an issue and a very real concern that a digital consumer can do nothing about. The biggest thing I don't think people are realizing with the Xbox One SAD edition though, is what's happening with their backwards compatibility. It's no secret that Xbone has struggled to secure a healthy game library this generation, and as such, backwards compatibility remains one of its most attractive features. The Xbox's backwards compatibility works by putting your old games in the Xbox disk drive. The console then detects what the game is, and then downloads it from a server for you to play. This type of backwards compatibility is unfortunately not future-proof, and probably costs Microsoft a bit to keep active, but it's something that makes the system that little bit more worth owning. But how will backwards compatibility work on the Xbox One S All Digital? Well, there was a rumor about trading in your old games for download codes and then you would download the game. But again, this takes all future-proofing out of your hands and just puts a death date on your games and console. Sure, the death date may be a long time off, but it's inevitable no matter how you look at it. I just can't see buying a system that I can't protect my own games on, or that may one day decide unceremoniously to shut down servers or stop selling a game weeks before I finally decide to give it a go. A situation that, if I could only game digitally, would leave me completely unable to explore an old gem. All are problems solved by the mere inclusion of a disk drive and the support of physical media. And of course, you're losing the ability to use your system as a DVD and Blu-ray player too. So no late nights staying up watching your favorite David Lynch movies on your Xbox One. Now, I did say I was of two minds on this thing. My first mind, obviously for gamers, I think this thing is trash. I think there's no perceivable reason to buy this over the other versions. The meager amount of cash you might be saving when this thing is priced normally over the other versions, it's not worth what you're giving up. On the other hand, for Microsoft, from their perspective, this is a bit of a genius Trojan horse kind of idea. Microsoft doesn't make money off you playing old games, and they make more money off you buying stuff digitally rather than physically. There's enough gamers out there who won't think or care about what's being lost, who consume media like it's a flavor of the week and will never be returned to. These people will buy the Xbox One S All Digital, and enough of them will do it to make the system worth putting out. Honestly, it doesn't cost Microsoft anything extra to produce this system. It's no more or less than a original original gutted Xbox One S as it is. Hell, the port for the disk drive is still attached to the motherboard. When a consumer buys an Xbox One S All Digital Edition, Microsoft guarantees themselves a few things. 1. That consumer will be buying new games in ways that earns Microsoft more money. 2. That consumer will not be partaking in older games unless new digital purchases are made for them, which makes Microsoft more money. 3. That consumer is more likely to buy into Microsoft's digital offerings, such as Game Pass, which will, of course, make Microsoft more money. 4. Having to not supply the system with a disk drive will save Microsoft money on production, but not only that, the disk drive that they're cutting from the console is a Blu-ray drive. Blu-ray, of course, is a format owned by Sony. Every time Microsoft uses one of these, they have to pay Sony to do so. Microsoft will no longer be giving Sony business on every Xbox made, and as such, they will no longer be supporting their competition. As much as we can criticize this system from a business standpoint, selling gutted Xbox One S's that completely eliminate used game sales and old games from being used in new ways, and bolsters online subscription services while simultaneously cutting a cash flow from their competition, is a brilliant move. And since we just got onto the topic of Sony, let's move on to the next story, the PlayStation 5. In a recent interview, specs for the PS5 were talked about in a rather off-the-cuff sort of way, and if what was said ends up being what makes it to the market, it's sounding like an awesome and probably terribly expensive system will be coming sometime around 2020. Now, the PS5, from what we know, will be using a lot of repurposed architecture from the PlayStation 4, and it will be backwards compatible to the PS4 library. It will also be supporting the PSVR headset. There's been no word on the backwards compatibility stretching back further than that, but it's not seeming too likely. Apparently, the dev kits that have already been sent out to developers have the ability to do real-time ray tracing and output games in resolutions as high as 8K. The system will also come with an SSD, which will cut loading times down to nearly 1/20th the original time seen on PS4. SSDs were a logical next step in console evolution, and something that would have made sense in our current generation, but we just weren't quite there yet when the last systems launched. What raises an eyebrow here though is the 8K resolution output and the ray tracing capabilities. If the PlayStation 5 can do 8K, I'm willing to guess it's not going to be native. And to be honest, with the budget of AAA games as it is, I don't see a reason for devs to pour more resources into their textures to make a game that outputs in 8K. Breaking even or making a decent profit margin after pushing texture definition that high just doesn't seem feasible to me right now. If there are any games that are being made in 8K, I think the 8K resolution will be sold as an additional patch or DLC for a game. A base game with 4K resolution will release at a standard price, and the 8K texture packs would probably be another $10. It's either that or the price of video games will go up as a whole for the sake of 8K resolution, and I just don't see that being a good direction to take gaming in right now. I'm skeptical of the ray tracing as well, and if the PS5 can really do it in real time, especially if it can do it while running games in 8K, oh boy is this thing going to cost a fortune. Granted, the console is not releasing this year, and my guess for its window is late 2020. The price of the components can come down a significant amount in that time, but I don't see it being significant enough. Thing is, I also don't see Sony releasing a really expensive console either. After the blunder that was the launch of the PS3, I think Sony may have learned a thing or two about console pricing. But if they are selling this at an accessible price, it will be getting sold at a very heavy loss to Sony. The system sounds awesome. Too awesome to be true by my measure, but only time will tell. It will certainly be fun to see just how powerful this thing is when it actually releases. And with that, I want to move on to the last topic of the video. As cool as the PlayStation 5 might be, seeing censored content in higher resolutions doesn't make censorship any more attractive to me. Some of you may have noticed an uptick of talk online recently over Sony censorship. This is due to two things. The first, Sony began messing with games with a higher profile. The second, Sony did in fact confirm in an interview with the Wall Street Journal they have been internally censoring their games. What we in the niche circles have already known, but have now heard straight from the horse's mouth. One good thing will come from this. Bigger channels and bigger outlets are now discussing the matter, and the majority does not seem to be on Sony's side with this. Though the big guys may be late to the punch, they can certainly punch a lot harder than I can. can, and it feels nice to see some of them in our corner, giving gamers the muscle they need to combat our overbearing, self-appointed parents. I'm not going to dig deeper into this today, as I've said all I need to say on the matter in a couple videos in the past. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on video game censorship and Sony's dumb policies, I'll link my older videos at the end of this one. Just know that the discourse has grown, and with it, changes may come. Without the discourse, well, we'll just stay where we are, and I'll continue not buying games Sony directly messes with unless I can buy them on a different platform. Now, that's all the news I wanted to hit on today, but I got a couple other things I want to throw out here at the end. First, I'll probably be playing Zanky Zero at some point, but God knows when I will, or if a review will follow it. But if you want a review, I want to point you to DrCullenPHD, a smaller niche YouTuber who does a great job with his videos. Like any YouTuber, I won't always agree with everything they say, but they explain themselves very well, so it's always easy to get a clear impression of a game and whether or not it will be for you. A link to his review will be in the description. Give it a check. If you like what you see, throw him a subscription. And secondly, this is just for the cinema fans out there, and especially the folks who get a kick out of exploring bad movies like I do. There is a really tiny channel out there named DumpsterDiveFilmReviews that's hosted by good old Judy Garbage. She makes awesome and entertaining videos in a kind of nostalgia critic format, without the skits and without being over the top to be entertaining. Her channel's just pleasant and endearing, honestly, and she has a great sense of humor. She currently sits at just over 100 subscribers, and her average video only gets around 60 or so views. But damn does she deserve more. I'll leave a link to her channel in the description as well if you guys feel the need for more trash cinema exploration in your life. For me, I can never have enough. And that's where I'm gonna leave this video today. I'm thinking of maybe doing one of these a month if there's topics that I feel like are worth talking about. And with these videos, I'll hopefully come with more recommendations of channels to subscribe to. Some related to gaming, some related to my other interests. We'll see what we get. Anyways, if you guys like the video, you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you can. Links to socials are in the description. If you really like the content, consider supporting the show on Patreon. As always, folks, thanks for watching.